everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Joel Silverman from Silverman Law Office here with your Montana business vlog, where we're connecting small town businesses across this country and letting business owners know how they can do it just like other people from small towns in Montana. So with me today I've got Max Pigman. Max, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, glad to be here.
For those of you that don't know, Max is the owner of Lewis and Clark Brewery. I really wanted to throw a joke in there. He can cut this out. I was going to say Blackfoot Brewery just to poke, but I figured better not. But Max
They're good people too. We've got some great breweries in this town, so I have nothing against anybody else. I'm a firm believer in the rising tide raises all ships.
Absolutely, they are great folks over there. But Max is from Lewis and Clark Brewery, everybody. Max, thank you so much. You are in a marketplace, and I'm going to jump. Normally I start back with somebody's history, but because of the way we joked with each other right there, you are in a marketplace that has had tremendous change. And I get asked, because our law office handles a lot of liquor licensing issues, when is there going to be the saturation in the brewery market? Because we've seen the number of breweries just expand like crazy across the state. I think Helena, we're now at 7. I believe, or
yeah, I think 5 open and 2 in planning, I've heard. Yeah. I think we're actually getting very close to that point, and I wouldn't say that there won't be new ones, but we're certainly seeing the growth numbers really starting to change. And I mean, even if you went back 2 years, and you know, we're kind of one of the old guys in this business. This will be coming up on year 19 for us, and a majority of the craft has exploded in the last 5 years, and quite a bit even in the last 3 or 4. So I think what you're seeing is there's a lot of opportunity for small breweries to become the neighborhood hangout and the neighborhood brewery. I think the challenge is going to be making that next step. That we've been fortunate enough to be doing this long enough that we were able to go through that growth curve, and I won't say that it's not possible for other breweries to do that, but it is going to be more of a challenge, because I mean, I think we were brewery number somewhere around 1,400, 1,500 in the country when I went to my first craft brewers conference in 2002. And now I think they're saying over 8,000 is where we're at in the country. So that's a significant amount of growth, and it's just inevitable that you're going to see that market start to split apart. And I think really what you're going to see is you're going to see folks that kind of got in towards the tail end, which I would consider now to be the tail end. When you look at the Craft Brewers Association numbers last year, everybody was growing at a really rapid rate. I mean, most people were selling every drop they made and shortened orders, and we were doing that for 4 or 5 years. We were growing 30 to 35% year over year, some years 50%, and still not being able to supply the market with what they wanted. And then just over the last 18 months, that's where you really started to see some of the regional and national players come into all the markets, because they kind of had to. They got shareholders and they got numbers, and they were planning on these growth rates that are just not happening now. And I think what you're going to find with craft is it is a locally relevant product, and the more locally relevant you can become, the more success you're going to have. So what I mean by that is people like to support local. They like to know what goes into the glass of beer that I'm drinking. Where did the ingredients come from? And I'd kind of even like to know the guy that made it if I could. You know, that's where we are in that smaller craft brewing world. Now, there's some larger players that have grown enormous during those rapid years of growth that are now struggling a bit to try to figure out where they fit in. My best analogy of this would be like, let's say Little Rock, Arkansas, for years didn't have a brewery. So they were screaming for any beer they could get from everywhere else. So there you got people like Stone Brewing in New Belgium and all these big players, Deschutes. And so they were starting to ship beer further and further away from their brewery because the demand is there. Well, now I think in Little Rock there's 15 breweries. So the demand is not as high as it was because, well, we got the local guys making it, so we don't need that anymore. And I think that's where you're going to see, and my whole goal is to not to try to take over the world, but to sell beer where I'm locally relevant, which to me is Montana and pretty much the states we touch. And then grow deep into those markets instead of worrying about trying to sell it in another part of the country that is logistically difficult and it's expensive. When you try to compete in somewhere like Denver or Portland or Seattle even at this stage, lots of breweries there. And yeah, you might have great beer and you've got a lot of local people that love your beer, but over there you're not local. You're the outsider coming in, so that liquid better be amazing or it's just not gonna work.
Let's step back, because your journey to where you are today, and by the way, for those folks who haven't been here and haven't gotten to tour the facility, what you've done here in Helena, Montana is spectacular.
Well, thanks.
But let's get back to your younger years when you first started your very first business, and tell us about that.
Sure. So I was, I started working like a lot of folks do in high school, and I actually joined the military when I was still in my senior year of high school, and waited for a slot because it was a specific job I wanted in the Air Force at reprogrammed flight computers. Actually ended up meeting my wife in high school in my junior year, and we fell in love, and we're still together today 34 years later. And really, I wouldn't be sitting here today without her. I mean, she's been my rock. I've done a lot of different things, and a lot of times I'm not here for some of the jobs I've had, and she certainly has kept the ship floating and pointed in the right direction. So, and at the same time put herself through nursing school, and she's an RN and been doing that for years up at the hospital. So, but when I got into the military, I always had a desire to do more than punch the clock and go to work and come home and watch TV or something. I don't know what it was, but I always was looking for that next edge, whether it's even, a part-time job driving forklift in a warehouse at night or whatever I needed to do to try to build something better than where I was at. And so in Las Vegas, my very first job, I started a recycling business for cardboard recycling. I was 19 years old. I really didn't know what I was doing, but one thing I learned from that process is I had the ability to communicate and the ability to sell. Because I went in and sold the guy that owned all the 7-Elevens in town on this concept before I had even built it, and then built a business out of that, and eventually sold that business and transferred to Japan in the military and came back to Las Vegas, and then we decided to move to Montana and raise our kids up there. But that was my first business, and when I was even in Japan in the military, I knew at that point that I had the ability to influence people. And so I started another business over there where I was importing electronics and selling them to the military folks. So I worked in the BXs and the PXs and was a representative for like Klipsch speakers and Polk Audio and Nakamichi and a lot of the electronics that GIs were really into buying big stereos and bringing them home after their tour in Japan. And so that was kind of my first taste of, oh wow, I like sales. I mean, sales can make me some money and it gives me some flexibility. And so I knew that at some point I would probably be doing some sales. So I finished my college, wanted to be a pilot. They didn't have any slots left in the military at the time. So we decided to move back to Montana. We moved to Helena and I got into real estate.
Wow. That's a heck of a journey.
Yeah.
Covered it quickly.
Yep. in a short summary.
What were some of the biggest hurdles you faced as a young entrepreneur? Were they hurdles you put in your way, or were they hurdles other people put in your way? A lot of people have self-doubts. They don't know where they come up with the money to get a startup going. Yeah. What was it for you?
I would say I've been really fortunate, first of all, and I'm incredibly blessed because I haven't had a lot of failures in business. But I think for the most part, the people that I would talk to that were kind of blown away at different points of why are you doing that, or isn't it? I believe I've been very risk tolerant all my life. I'm a gambler. I like to play poker and that sort of thing. And so I didn't have I didn't have that sense of, wow, I just want the 8-to-5 job and I got my secure paycheck. I always had this thirst or desire to do something more. And that allowed me to take some risks. Now, they didn't all turn out perfectly, but none of them also broke me, which I learned a few lessons along the way. But I would say if anything, I probably learned, and my wife was the opposite. She grew up in a family, her dad was Forest Service, very steady job for a number of years, steady paycheck, good benefits. So she was less excited about those risky adventures that I was taking, and a lot of times would pull me back a little bit and say, hey, do we really need to do that? I mean, things are going pretty good here. And so I would credit her with giving me that balance and a little bit of sense of reality. And I get so excited about the opportunity. And what I found early on is when I'm excited about the opportunity, it's fairly simple for me to get other people excited about the opportunity. And so I've been fortunate that I've had the ability to do things because I've met other people that got excited with me and were willing to invest in opportunities.
It's funny you bring up your wife and how pivotal she is in your ability to make sound decisions. I run into so many business people who, when I ask them, well, how much do you involve your wife in your business? And they literally tell me, I don't even speak to my wife about my business when I get home. And that just shocks me when I hear that, because I know in my life, my wife is critical in balancing me out so I don't go do stupid things and have to pay the dumb tax.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, it is a very important part of my life, and it has been forever. And I guess probably the thing that created that relationship is within 2 years of getting out of high school to be thrown into a foreign country and not even living on the military base, but living out in the Japanese world and not speaking the language, at least initially. We both picked up some Japanese and we lived over there. But we found most couples in our situation either got divorced because it was too hard, or you become very close and you become, you're spending a lot of time together and you're sharing everything. And so I think we developed a sense of trust back in those days that has really been the foundation of our relationship, because I spent 19 years on the road traveling about 40 to 45 weeks a year, and most relationships wouldn't deal with that very well either. I'd fly out Monday and back Thursday, so my wife was pretty much raising my kids. I mean, I seen them on the weekend, but the first time you come home on the weekend and try to change the rules, you realize that's a bad mistake because you're not there for the rest of the time. Yeah. And so she's always been the rock of my life. And yeah, I don't know what I would do without her. Now, there's certainly times that I don't share some things with her because she will stress a lot harder than I will. I've had the ability to not stress about things, especially things I can't control. So I'm one of those people that, yeah, it's a bummer that it takes you a long time in traffic. I used to commute to LA on a regular basis and spent a lot of time on the freeways, the 405 and a lot of the places down there, and people would get so upset and stress so much about how long it took to get somewhere. You're really not going to control that output, and all you're doing is creating negative energy in yourself. I would spend that time trying to come up with new things or think about other things in my life that I could fix and just utilize that time. I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't allow it to get me, I guess, physically. It never really impacted me on a physical level or stressed me out that much. And even today, I mean, I've been in the last 2 years, honestly, been the most stressful times of my life. And it's because when you've invested the kind of money that we've invested, and when you've borrowed, honestly, the kind of money that we borrowed, you have a really big nut to make every month. Mm-hmm. And you worry about, wow, did we grow too fast at the wrong time? And am I going to be able to make these payments? And more so than worrying about failure, you have a different weight when you have a lot of people that rely on you, and this is their primary job, and some of these people have moved here to work here. So that probably has weighed on me more than anything in the last 30 years. It's just been the last couple of years, but things are, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I knew this was going to be one of those growth modes that we just went through that's going to take a while to get over the hump. I just don't know how long the tunnel is right now, but I can see that light, and I feel better about the fact that we're gonna get there. And then once we get there, and we're in the black, so to speak, then I'm very realistic. As long as we can continue to grow at any rate, and I can take care of my people and provide good incomes for them, then I think life is good.
It's funny you bring up the stress factor, because I was just on the phone with my father the other night. He's an entrepreneur, and he says to me, I don't even understand what stress is, because he doesn't stress about anything. And your story about driving, and you watch people who get road rage, they get so upset about something,
yeah.
and it's something that took me a while to realize how negative that was impacting me when I was driving, and something would happen, because I grew up in Las Vegas.
Oh, sure.
Terrible traffic.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the change was, but all of a sudden when something like here in Helena, it's almost impossible to get across the train tracks without hitting the train.
Yeah.
And it changed my mindset that something like that can happen, and be excited about it.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody cuts me off, hey, great. Maybe you're in a hurry and you need to get somewhere faster than me. Good luck, go for it, buddy.
Yeah.
Right? But then to also spin it with an attitude of, hey, this is an opportunity for me to use as a learning experience. Maybe it's going to allow me more time to think about my business, about my life,
yep.
what I'm trying to accomplish. I just love that. That's great.
And I think really what it comes down, my wife is the opposite, and she will handle the double stress load for me. Sometimes she stresses because I don't stress.
Yes.
So for example, I'm one of those personalities that, I have some strengths in communication and the ability to influence and that sort of thing, but I have some big weaknesses. I am not an organized kind of person, and I think the best thing that I was able to do early on in my business life is admit that I wasn't good at some things, and actually hire people to do some of those things, even though I might not have had the money. And I said, well, gosh, I could do that myself. Yeah, but you're not going to do it, because you're a procrastinator and you're only working on the hottest fire at any one time. And a lot of these things have to get done on a regular basis. There's other people that love to do things on a regular basis. It's just the way they're made up. And so, for example, I lose stuff on a regular basis, and I'll lose like my wallet. And I don't call it losing if it's been less than a week, because it's probably going to turn up somewhere. But that will drive my wife crazy. Where's your wallet? I don't know. It's probably either in my office or my gym bag or my car. Well, she would have to stop everything and find it right now, or we have a major problem on our hands. And most of the time, those things do end up coming back. Once in a while, I gotta make the phone calls and cancel credit cards and all that stuff, but it's just one of those things that I learned early on, that I don't want to spend so much time worrying about something what I would consider trivial.
Yeah.
Like I lost this, or where's my keys, or how come I can't. I've just learned that, hey, even if I have to buy another set of headphones because I lost the ones I have, I'm okay with that. I'm an idiot. I made a mistake, and that's the pain that I have to pay, as I got to reach into my account and do that. I would rather do that than for a month not have headphones and beat myself up over the fact that I lost them. It's life goes on.
Absolutely. You bring up a great point about playing off your strengths and your weaknesses, hiring the right people to cover your weaknesses.
Yeah.
For you, it sounds like maybe organization, a detailed person. How did you go find that kind of person to help fill in what you needed?
I've been pretty fortunate in that regard too. Sometimes it's crazy. I'll look at an opening I have for a job, and put some information that we're hiring here, and get 11 or 12 resumes, and because of my weakness of organization and procrastination and everything else, sometimes, you know, I'll only get a chance to connect with, I've reached out to them, but only connect with 2 or 3. And there's certainly been times that I've interviewed 11 or 12 people as well, but I don't know what it is, but it seems like the best candidates just kind of bubbled themselves up, and I don't even, I didn't purposely say I need someone that can do this because I can't do it very well, but I would describe myself in honesty to these candidates. Hey, this is what you're going to run into working for me. Like the bookkeeper I have right now, who's an amazing woman, Michelle Harvey. I described, hey, this is kind of my life, and this is what I need to make this thing work. And she said, hey, that sounds like me. I can do that. And so I think it is really important to look at what kind of time do you spend doing things, and do you enjoy the things that you're doing? And not only that, but are you really productive at those tasks? Because it's like washing your car or mowing your grass or whatever. If there's a therapeutic reason for you to do that and you enjoy it, hey, I think you should do it all your life. But if you're doing it because you think you're saving money, you've got to sit down and look at, okay, what is my income target goal? And if I divide that by 2,000 hours for some people or 4,000 hours for other people, and say, how much am I making an hour doing that? Well, gosh, I could probably hire someone to do that and get a better outcome and spend that same amount of time doing something positive. And that kind of ties into being negative about things you can't control. I know other business owners that focus so much on some negative thing that has either happened to their business or might happen to their business. Well, what if these tariffs do this? And what if this does? Hey, you know what? You know, Skittles might fly out of a unicorn's butt too, but I don't think it's going to happen. I don't have time to focus on that right now. So focus on the things that you know you're best at and that are going to produce positive results, instead of focusing on either a problem that doesn't exist or worrying about somebody else that might be a competitor or any of those things that really don't produce positive results. And so I think by doing that, I've been pretty fortunate, and I'm kind of a believer in the whole karma system as well. I believe if you treat people the way you want to be treated, at some point you're going to run into a few people that you don't like. And you know, I have a rule. I do all the music booking here, and I love music, and that's probably not the most effective use of my time, but I enjoy it. And so it's a little bit of a release for me from the other stuff to actually build relationships with these musicians when they come in and that sort of thing. So it's important to have a balance. It's just that my hobby actually is also part of my business. Mm-hmm. But someday I'll probably give that to somebody and that will be their job. But it's just been one of those things that I actually look forward to instead of dread.
So Max, I know you love to travel. I see that you travel a lot. And for a business owner, I know a lot of business owners, me included, we don't get out of our businesses enough. I'm learning that this year. I'm starting to put things in place to allow me to get out. How do you do it with your family? Because your kids are not all in Helena.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, they're now, I've got one in Portland, one in LA, and one here in Helena. So I guess, you know, I traveled for so many years for work, another job that I had, that I did get a little bit tired of the mundane process of living out of a suitcase, 3 hotels a week, 3 cities a week, and just constantly on the go. But I absolutely enjoy that. That was for work. And so I was going through airports at 11 o'clock at night and thinking about the guy sitting there watching the latest episode of Game of Thrones at home and kind of wishing I had a regular job, you know. But now my travel is, you know, somewhat limited for the brewery. I do some regional travel. We're now in all of Idaho. We're in all of Montana. We're in eastern Washington. We're just moving into Wyoming, and then soon North Dakota and South Dakota. And that'll be kind of the states that we touch, so to speak, that we grow. So most of that is just 2 or 3 day road trips and not a big deal. But the fun part of travel for me, blessed with, I've got a couple million miles on Delta. I did a lot of flying for a lot of years. Gives us the ability to take some trips, and so my wife and I will escape for, especially in the wintertime, taking a week to 10 days just to kind of thaw out somewhere warm and come back, and then in the summertime, going to Minnesota where my wife was from and stuff. So I think it's much easier now to travel than it was before as far as staying connected. A lot of the work I'm doing is in front of a keyboard anyway. Or on a telephone, and more and more you're seeing even landlines go away and everybody's just using your mobile. So that's a primary connection point that all of my key contacts and distributors have, is my mobile phone, so I can really answer questions and solve problems without being here. It just takes another call to here to find out, hey, what do we got in the warehouse? What do we need to do to solve this problem? And so I do think it's important for business owners to start evaluating how much time am I in my business and how much time am I in the weeds, and am I taking at least a little bit of my time once in a while to take a step back and say, where do I want this business to be in 24 months, 36 months, or 5 years? And then the next step, which I have faults as well, and this is one of mine that I'm working on this year, is to make sure that all my employees know what I'm thinking. Because I've learned that if you don't continue to communicate, even though I've said, hey, I've got an open door policy, come in and chat with me anytime, you got a question, people still feel intimidated by taking your time because they see you running around and, wow, he seems like a real important guy. I don't know if I want to take his time. And so my challenge this year has been, and I've already done this with several employees, is just to, out of the blue, sit down and ask them how things are going. And what part of the job are you enjoying and what part of the job do you not necessarily like? Because we're a growing business and there's going to be lots of new opportunities, and I kind of want to know if people are really happy where they're at and they just, wow, I could just do this over and over, well, then that's great. Mm-hmm. But if you're feeling a little bored in your job or frustrated in your job, if you're the right person, I want to find another job for you within my organization, because you're too good of a person to lose. Mm-hmm. And I've lost some people, and I've lost some good people, not in a negative way, but I really believe that if I would have taken more time to explain the vision and continue to update them on what the plans are, and that I would have saved some of those people.
Yeah. So when you do lose someone, are you the kind of person who analyzes why you lost them and how to change that in the future? Or how do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, let's be honest. Sometimes you lose someone and it's like, oh, good. That actually works better now, because not everybody is perfect for every job. But yeah, the key people that you think to yourself at night, wow, this person is doing, it would really hurt if this person left. Those are like a kick in the gut. Mm-hmm. when you find out they're taking another opportunity. And a lot of times it's not about money, it's not about they don't like you or they don't feel, sometimes it's about they had a really cool opportunity. And hey, I've had those situations happen to me, so I'm not going to try to talk somebody into staying if they have an opportunity that I look at and say, wow, that is a great opportunity. You need to do what's best for you and your family and really better yourself. And so most of those have been those kind of opportunities, or people that, were trying something and they're kind of that square peg in the round hole. They could do it, but they're not really loving it. And the thing about the brewing industry especially is most of the jobs, they're getting better in pay scales, but it's not the place to get rich if you want to brew beer for a living. But it's a passion that people have. It's like painters or musicians. They have a passion for creating these unique flavors and these great beers. And so they will take a little bit of a pay cut to do that instead of work in a cubicle or work somewhere else where they could make a little less. My goal, and I think this should really be every business person's goal, is to look at where you're at, like in Montana, and say, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of checking around, and the one thing about the craft beer industry that may be incredibly different from a lot of industries is we share a lot of information. We're competitors, but we're friends. I like to say, I've heard this a long time ago, that the craft beer industry is like 99% asshole free. So what I mean by that is most of the people will want to help each other. So you're out of some ingredients? Oh, I'll lend you some. Or, hey, do you need some advice? Have you ever done this? Yeah, I did that and it didn't work so well. A lot of other industries don't do that. They say, what, are you kidding me? I'm not helping you. You're my competitor. Yeah. And so by utilizing some of that information from some of my competitive friends, like, hey, what, you know, and your peers, owner to owner, hey, what are you paying your top guy? I promise I'm not going to try to pull them away, but I'm just wanting to make sure that I'm in the range of what's normal. And I think if your goal can be, hey, I want my employees and my organization to be in the top 5% income earners of similar jobs in a similar market, in the state of Montana, for example, then I can feel proud about the fact that they're not going to get enticed by a little bit of money somewhere. But the other key thing that I would recommend any business owner do is take the time to outline not only the pay, but the benefits. And you have to sit down on an annual basis with your employees and you take a spreadsheet and you say, yes, this is what's in your paycheck, because there's a lot of employees that only look at that paycheck. And when they start comparing with a friend across town that works at company X, they say, hey, I'm making $2 an hour less. Oh, okay, well, let's take a look at everything that you're getting here. And you know, some of those are indirect compensations. Like we have a program that we help pay for someone to go to the gym. We have a program for health insurance. We have a program for 401k matching and things like that. Easy to forget about those things until you put them in black and white, and then you add that total number up and just say, so hey, if you're ever comparing apples to apples, just make sure you got all the apples on the paper and not just looking at your paycheck. And still to this day, there's some people that just can't grasp that. And they'll just look at that dollar number and make another choice. But at least you have to give them the opportunity to see that.
I love to hear that, by the way, because I hear that so infrequently that employees almost never understand their entire pay package, as I call it. That pay package that is, here's what's in your check, here's the taxes, here's the benefits, here's retirement, health insurance, all those things added in. Because so many times what I hear is, well, here's what I take home. And they don't think about all the other things that build into it.
Beer credit in the brewing industry is pretty common. Well, that can add up pretty quick when you're talking about $100 a month for an employee to be able to enjoy some of the beer after work or take a six-pack home or something. And then you start realizing, wow, yeah, I guess I never really thought of it that way, but when I used to work at the brewery, I did get free beer, and I'm still drinking beer, but now I'm paying for it at the grocery store. So those kind of things, you kind of need to continually remind your employees of those benefits, for sure.
You know, you brought up the situation where employees are afraid of taking your time, right? Because you're running around like crazy. I end up with the same thing, and I just noticed this or recognized it last year where my team had gotten to the point where they were afraid to stop me. And so I have done something similar where I've sat everybody down and I've said, okay, you see my calendar, you see how crazy packed it is. No matter how busy my calendar is, if you can find 15 minutes, put it on my calendar. It's you and me. If we need 30 minutes, come in 30 minutes early in the day. I'll be here early. If you put it on my calendar for a meeting, I'm there and I'm yours. When that time hits for you and me, walk in the door. If you don't walk in my door, I'm going to understand that you didn't show up for our meeting. Right? So I've also put the onus on them to break me up and let them know that that's okay, number one. Number two, I actually need it. I need the breakup sometimes.
Absolutely. I think I've tried to do that. It's still tough. Sometimes people just in their mind think that my issue is not important enough to take out that 15 minutes. And so this year I've decided I'm gonna, you know, that opportunity to always set up a meeting, but I'm also gonna just pencil in on my own calendar to take 15 minutes and say, hey, how are things going? And just try to get a little more connected to all of my people so that I can understand and maybe see an issue before the issue really arrives. I've got some good friends that are minority shareholders in the company, 2 friends and family, and I certainly lean on advice from those. And one of them just told me the other day, and another idea is in an area where you don't have any cameras, because we have a lot of cameras in our facility, but you say, hey, everybody, there's going to be a box in here. It's a lock box, kind of like the old suggestion box. But it's if you ever have a question about how something works here and you're feeling like it's too hard to connect with me, just drop it in here. And you can either put your name on it and I'll get back to you directly, or don't put your name on it and I'll answer everybody, because we've got the ability to communicate electronically to the whole team. Because if you're wondering that, maybe someone else is wondering that too. And that can certainly happen. And as another cautionary tale to business owners, is we all have lots of things going on in our lives, and we've all worked to get where we're at by different means. So just because I decide to take a trip somewhere nice like St. Thomas doesn't mean that I took money out of the brewery to do that. And you need to educate your employees on that, because otherwise I might say, well, gee, how come we don't have money for this new pump we needed, but the boss is taking a trip to Tahiti? You've got to educate them on the process of, hey, you know, I've worked 2 jobs for 30 years and I've done some things in my life to enable me to do some other things now, but it has nothing to do with this current business. Someday, I'm hoping this business is going to be a great investment, but right now, don't think that when you see me purchase, whether it's a car or a pinball machine in my office or whatever it is, that now you're less likely to get a raise, because that's my money. That's my personal side of my house. And if you don't say that, it's easy for people's minds to start going the other direction. But if you're real clear with that, the nice thing is the employees will self-police that kind of communication when it first starts.
Yes.
So when a new person says, I see there, it's like, oh no, you don't understand. This guy's been, and they'll educate those new people so that they understand, because it is important. Those kind of things can fester, and that's what creates a lot of problems in small companies.
It gets poisonous and very toxic very quickly.
And one of the things that I'm sure you've seen this as well is it is just common now for younger people to have higher expectations. And I think that's great, but it's good to remind them sometimes that this didn't happen this year. You know, this is 30 some years of work and effort of what you're seeing here. So, you know, make sure that you have some realistic expectations about where I can be in 2 years or 3 years, because I think there's been so many explosions of wealth that get highly advertised and highly marketed. And you know, I come from the technology industry, and I have some friends that have been fortunate enough to have those explosions of wealth, and sometimes it's purely luck, being in the right place at the right time, but you can't utilize that as your bar that you're trying to achieve, because it's kind of like saying I want to be a professional football player. Odds are pretty slim that you're going to do that. You might enjoy playing football and have a great time doing it, but don't bet the farm on that being your income, because it's probably not realistic for most people.
That's a great little lead in. You have a lot of millennial employees. You hear a lot of complaints about millennials, and I think there's actually a couple of great podcasts that Simon Sinek has done about the difficulty for managers in managing millennials, because they're not understanding how to train them to get them out of that instant gratification they get from a cell phone to understanding this concept of this didn't happen overnight.
Right.
You've got to, how do you deal with millennials in a way that they understand that their life doesn't happen instantaneously?
Yeah.
You've got to build a plan, and you've got to think strategically and long term how you're going to make that happen.
Yeah, it has been a challenge. It's been a little bit of a wake-up call. I guess one of the advantages I had is I taught technology for so many years to everybody from millennials to baby boomers to seniors that were in the real estate industry. So I got a little bit of taste of expectations and what people were doing. But I guess a lot of that, I think, can be filtered out in the early stages, like during interviews. I'll give you an example. Several years ago, we had an open spot on, we start our entry-level guys usually on packing off cans on the end of the canning line and some tasks that you can train people fairly easily on. But then kind of weed through the ones that, wow, this person is the kind of guy that when there's nothing to do, picks up a broom and starts sweeping instead of gets on his phone and just starts texting. And so I think a lot of work ethic, unfortunately, has not been as early on in the training mode for a lot of younger people. We still see some that come in and do a great job and are always looking for something to do. But while I was interviewing, I interviewed like 6 or 8 people, and they were all in that, I would say, 18 to 25 year range. And what really surprised me is during the interview, 2 of the individuals actually got a text message, they're answering a question, they pull out their phone, answered the text, and put it back in their pocket, and never even, I think in their mind, they didn't even realize they had done that. Because at the end of the interview, I said, hey, was that something important? And they said, what? Well, the text message you got that you responded to while we were doing the interview. Oh, no, wasn't that important? And I said, oh, because I was just wondering, I thought it may be really important. And they said, no, I can do both at the same time. And I do think there's a perception and becoming more common for young people to say, what's the big deal? I mean, I do that with 4 of my friends when we're out to dinner, we're all texting and talking at the same time. So, and maybe that is okay. Maybe we've got to a mode where for someone like me, that was still disrespectful and a sign to me right there that, okay, this probably is not going to work for us because the initial reaction was not good. So some of it is probably, the fact that it's become so normal that they don't know another way. It is the way they go out through their day. And I have struggled with some of them on the retail side, texting behind the bar and things like that. And I've had to say, hey, your phone's got to stay in your locker. If you need to go check it every once in a while, because I understand you're a mother and you've got children and someone's watching your kids, but there's also a phone here. And if it's an emergency, they could call the phone and we can find you and we can make sure that you've got that emergency handled. And what's interesting is if you allow it initially, it'll just continue to grow and grow. And the problem is not even in productivity as much as it is in perception. So I've got a guy at the end of the bar and his beer is now empty. And he looks over and, when your beer gets to be about this much, you're starting to think about, am I going to have another one or not? And when it's dead empty, you're starting to make that decision, well, should I go or where's the waitress or the bartender? And then you look over and they're on their phone and you realize, oh, okay, that phone is more important than I am. And that perception is really that causes more of the problem. So we've had our issues with that, but I think we've created a balance now that is somewhat livable and we don't have as many of those issues as we did.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking with another business owner recently, and they said, this is the first time in history that we've ever seen where this switch happened where employers, it was always the employees adjusting to the employer, to the boss. Now the bosses are trying to figure out how can they adjust to work with the employees.
Yeah, I think that is true. I think there's some of that you have to be open to that change, or you're going to start to lose some of the pool of opportunity of workers that you have, because they've become to expect certain things now, and if you don't provide those, there's, in our environment of low unemployment right now, there's a lot of places a person can actually go find a job this afternoon. Yeah. And it's not like the old days where people held on to that job like like gold, because what if I lost this job? I'll never get another one. I think more and more they don't have that feeling because they didn't grow up in that environment. The thing that I'm seeing on a regular basis is when I look at resumes, how short a distance the work periods are. And that's always a little bit of a eyebrow raise for me, is if you've been somewhere 8 months and then a year and then 8 months and then a year, I'm going to invest a lot of time and energy into training you, and I don't really want to do that just to see you leave in a year to go somewhere else. So those are conversations that and you can't really get someone to sign a contract and say, I'm going to be here 3 years no matter what, but we heavily verbally get them to commit that, hey, if we're going to do this, I need you to tell me that you're going to be here, at least 2 to 3 years. Otherwise, we're going to try to find someone that can commit to that.
Yeah.
And they may still, things happen. People have family issues or health issues or whatever, and that's fine. But I think getting that commitment, and especially for some of the young people, I think that's been the first time I could tell that someone's asking for that commitment. And so they're a little bit shell shock, and yeah, I really need this commitment from you. It's a little harder for most people to leave if they made a verbal commitment and shook your hand, even though you're not going to take them to court, but hey, they made a commitment. And so now they feel in their own heart that, wow, I guess my word's not very good. I didn't stand behind that.
That's a great little lead in, because it amazes me when I see resumes come across my desk in the professional world and they have jumped a job almost every year or every 2 years. And my philosophy as a professional is, you don't really understand your job in the professional world until you've been there for 5 years.
Yeah.
And it just boggles my mind when I see that over and over again. I'm like, why would we even want to interview that person? And like you said, put the time in just to watch them leave in 8 months to a year.
You're really not an asset to me for the first year. Yeah, you're a help, and you can certainly learn some of the basic tasks and become a help, but once you know all the pieces of equipment that you're working on and can actually fix them when they break, now you've become a real asset to me, and that's when we can start talking about pay raises and start talking about longevity. And so yeah, that scares me as well when I see whether those short patterns are something that I end up kind of straying away from, unless I find someone that's just dynamic, that has a good story as to why that happened. Well, the first job was my uncle and his business went out. And the second job was, there's always extenuating circumstances that can be justified. But for the most part, I like to see people that have had 2 or 3 years, even 4 or 5 years in a place. And then you realize, okay, this person really got to know that job and became a big asset for whatever that company was.
Absolutely, and I like the idea of getting a promise and a handshake from them. I'm going to invest in you. Are you willing to invest back in me?
Exactly.
Right.
I think it's super critical.
We've been at it for a while. How do you educate yourself to be better at business, to be a better communicator? Do you read books? Do you listen to podcasts?
I do. I listen to podcasts now that we're I used to spend a lot of time in airplanes. Now I'm spending a lot of times behind the wheel, driving around to the different towns that we distribute in. And so I'll listen to podcasts there. I also go to conferences. I mean, I go to the Craft Brewers Conference every year, and I actually go to the classes. I just don't go to party, and I certainly have a great time and see a lot of people there. But I'd say some of the best value in those conferences is meeting a peer that's similar to you in another market, that even though, like I said before, we're competitively friendly, we probably even share more information with someone that's in a market that will never impact us, and really talk nuts and bolts about margins and things that we've done that have been successes or failures. And so I think reconnecting with someone that is your peer, about your size, maybe someone that you look up to, and the fact that they're double your size, but they've been in business less than you have, actually trying to connect with them. It's amazing how people feel, just like employees maybe feel weird about connecting with a boss that's busy. People feel like, oh, well, if I'm at this level in my business and this person up here is at this level, they probably don't even want to talk to me. A simple email, especially if you go to a conference and you hear a speaker that's actually good and you say, wow, this guy is really good. And a lot of those speakers are business owners that are given their own personal experience. My experience has been, and I've been on the flip side of that, where I've been the speaker, you get a well-written email from someone that, first of all, says, wow, I learned a lot from your session, and I know you're very busy, but if there's ever an opportunity for us to, oh my gosh, I've gotten spreadsheets from these guys, I've gotten all sorts of things, because you know, at the end of the day, they also get some gratification in helping others. I think we all do. Mm-hmm. And they also see that, hey, if I'm willing to stand up in front of a group of 300 or 400 people and tell my story, and this person has reached out to me directly, hey, I'm willing to share even a little bit more with this person, because they're not going to directly compete with me or cause me any negativity. So
absolutely,
I do that on a regular basis.
I'm with you 100%. You get so much more gratification when you're helping others succeed.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of why we're doing this, is
sure.
We're hoping that somebody will see, whether it's this interview or a different one,
yeah.
and pick something up that they can go, wow, okay, I'm seeing something in a different light.
Yeah, and I spend a lot of time online reading articles, and you know, if I've got an extra 3 minutes, I'm usually on my phone, or I've got my iPad in my lap. Even if I'm watching TV with the wife, we're both this way. We both have our iPads out while we're watching TV, and now we even have our AirPods in, so in case I'm watching a video, it's not bothering her. And it's crazy how we become consumers of content and media today, and we actually are consuming 2 or 3 things at the same time a lot, yeah. Because this is not quite as interesting as this right now, but I might pause this in a second because this becomes more interesting. Yeah. And you know, that's just a great way to get more educated.
So on podcasts, do you have a favorite podcast? Do you like variety? Is that?
Yeah, I listen to quite a bit of variety. I mean, when I'm on the road, it's the number one way I've found to stay awake. I do not enjoy driving. I got so used to flying for years, and behind the wheel, I easily get tired. And I've found that podcasts versus music, and I love music, but I can fall asleep to music. But podcasts, if they're interesting, I'm listening and my mind is going, and so it keeps me there. So I kind of vacillate. I listen to like revisionist history, which are just good stories about things in the past that have you look at differently, because of Malcolm Gladwell is one of my favorite guys for that. And I listen to, sometimes I'll get in the mode where I just want to be somewhat entertained. And I remember years ago driving with my mom and dad from Hamilton, where I grew up, over to Boulder, which some of our family lived in Boulder. And we listened to those old AM radio programs at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night coming over the pass. And you know, where the door would open and close and the bell would ring, and those old radio time.
All right, Max, so before we're done here, I want to ask you one little question, which is, do you have any parting tidbits for our audience here? Something that would, good little piece for them to take home?
You know, I guess I would say the thing that I could really gauge part of our success, a major part of our success, is connecting with your community. And there's a lot of ways to do that that aren't necessarily writing checks. I get people every day that want a check, and I get that. There's a lot of people that need money, they need donations, but if there's a way that you can take whatever product you're creating or whatever widget you make and incorporate that into a benefit to someone in the community. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Like, we had some space we didn't know what to do with. It was a weird little section of a 3-foot thick stone wall building that was just kind of a out of the place area. And so we partnered with the local art society, and there's an art gallery in there. So we don't charge any rent, and we don't charge any commission on the paintings that are sold in there. They're all local artists, but they also manage the whole thing. So part of the deal was, hey guys, I'm willing to do this, but if one sells, first of all, they're gonna call your number, they're not gonna go to the bar and ask for it, and you're gonna replace it within 24 hours, so there's not a hole on the wall. And so by partnering with that, now I've opened the business up to a whole different section of people that are artists that are going to bring their friends in and say, yeah, my painting's down at the brewery. Let me show you. Let's go on in. And I've done that with artists. I've done it with music. I've done it with nonprofits. And the other thing is, going back to using your product, instead of writing a check for cash, I say, hey, can we put a gift basket together for your silent auction? So I've got a growler and a gift card and a t-shirt and a couple of glasses because I need a little bit of marketing out of this deal as well. And I've always thought if I can, and in many cases you can't get all your money back, but you're going to get way more of your money back in most cases than if you just write them a check.
Yeah.
And so if you can encourage them, and I've had people that are looking for money that I said, hey, I can't do that, but I can do this. Oh, that's a good idea. And then they start building that part of like a silent auction out or an Ales for Charity night where we actually give $1 of each glass of beer to a charity. And what I've really learned is when the going gets tough, those people are incredibly important. I had a situation where we needed to go through a major process at the city to get a conditional use permit, and there was some people that wanted that and some people that didn't want it, but for my business it was incredibly important. And there was a line of people, I think probably 50 to 60 people showed up to testify that they wanted to see us grow and they wanted to see us do that. And when I started looking down that line, I looked at musicians and artists and nonprofits, and I realized that, wow, that investment just paid off. Those people really, and not that I did it for that reason, but because you're connected to the community wants to see you do well. It's incredibly important.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I love giving back to our community. Love finding ways, creative ways to give back, whether it's our office, donating time, getting our clients to help chip in as well. It's just a fantastic way to create that warmth and connection.
It pays huge dividends.
Yeah, and it even gets your team involved.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and gives them a sense of pride in the community that they were a part of that basket. Hey, that's beer that I helped brew or can, right? What a great way to connect them.
For sure.
Max, thank you for your time today.
Thanks
this
for
was fantastic.
coming. It was a pleasure to spend some time with you.
This was great. Everybody, thanks for joining us. Joel Silverman with the Montana Business Vlog. Please like us at the bottom of our YouTube page. Find us at mttaxlaw.com. That's where Silverman Law Office's webpage is. Again, Max, a pleasure. And everybody, if you didn't find something here, then you clearly weren't paying attention. We're connecting small businesses and small towns and showing people how to do a new way of business. Hey, thanks for joining us.
One other thing, if you don't mind me to add, is because very few people get to see the inside of the operation. Every summer, the middle week of June, so this year it's June 15th and 16th, we have an open house, and it's free, and we set up a little display board so you can actually go through and learn the whole process. We have our representatives to describe it, and then we do a big block party and have free live music and all that. So we encourage people to put that on their calendar and just look for the middle week of June each year and come on down and take a look around. We appreciate showing them around. Perfect. Pay attention to social media for that with Lewis and Clark Brewing, middle of June. Going to be there sometime. It's their customer appreciation. They open the place up. How fantastic is that? Cool. Thanks again, Joel. Thanks, Max.